Hello South Shore, welcome back to Math with Naz. Today we are going to continue working on Module 5 as we move on to Lesson 6. But you will need to remember some of the things we learned from Lesson 5 in order to do Lesson 6. Namely, we're going to be working on unit form and fraction form. What you're going to need to work on this lesson with me is, if you are in my class, get out your whiteboard, marker, and eraser. If you are not in my class or don't have access for whatever reason to your whiteboard, no sweat, your journal and a pencil will do. Get what you need to work on this unit and then come on back and we'll get started together. Okay, third graders, to get started today, we're going to review what we learned in Module 5, Lesson 5. And that's how to write fractions in both their unit form and their fraction form. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a shape. I'm going to draw a circle. And I'm going to partition that circle by drawing one line right down the center. Now I want you to think about how many pieces I have partitioned or cut that shape into. And I'm going to shade in just one part of that. So I know that I have shaded in one part of two. And when there's two parts, we call that half. I have shaded in 1/2. That's how I write this fraction in unit form. I write it in fraction form as 1/2. Let's remind ourselves what each of those numbers in the fraction means. The 1 is the amount that I'm working with. And today, like I said, I'm working with the shaded parts. 2 represents the total number of parts. 1 part, 2 parts. There's 2 parts total. I have now shaded in 1/2. Now, let's think about another unit form and fraction that I can write. Go ahead and erase your boards if you are working alongside me. And this time, I definitely would like you to work alongside me. So on your whiteboards, go ahead and draw a circle. Circles are always pretty challenging for me, especially right there where they come together. It always gets a little bit wonky, but that's okay. Just do your best. Remember, we are just estimating. Now, I want to partition this fraction into 3 equal parts. Like I explained to you one time, the best way for me to do that is to find the center of the circle and draw a dot, just like that. Now, is that the exact center of the circle? Probably not, but it's my best estimate. I'm now gonna draw kind of a, the best I can, I'm gonna draw a peace sign. So I'm going to take one line out like that, and one line up like this, and then I'm gonna draw one line down the center. I now have 3 equal parts. Okay, so if I partition if I shade in one of my partition sides, I will get 1 part of 3, or 1/3 shaded in. Again, this is 1 part of 1, 2, 3. I would write that as 1/3 in unit form and 1/3 in fraction form. But third graders, I don't just want to work with one of my parts of 3. I want to make an exact copy of that unit form by shading in a second equal part. Now what I want you to think about right here is how many parts I have shaded in. How can I write that in unit form? Think it and say it out loud. That's right, 2/3. On your whiteboard, go ahead and write down 2/3. And then also please write it down in fraction form. Total number of parts shaded in over total of number of parts there are altogether. Say it, 2/3. I have now made 2/3 by making a copy of the 1/3. Here's 1, there's the copy. All right, third graders, now we're going to move on to a whole different shape, a rectangle. And I'm going to walk you through how to draw and partition this rectangle. So if at any point I am moving too fast for you, go ahead and pause the video until you catch up. The first thing I'm going to do is I am going to draw a rectangle. Then I am going to partition that rectangle in half, like a hot dog this time, not like a hamburger. Once you have partitioned this in half, then go ahead and partition it in half again. This time you are partitioning it like a hamburger. So I have fourths at this point. Okay, third graders, now that you're done with that, you are going to draw two diagonal lines from this corner to this corner to start with. And then from this corner to this corner, making sure to bring your line through that center angle like that. So once you have this drawn, again, pause the video if you need to, go ahead and shade in one part, and you can shade in any of the parts that you want. Now let's write that as a unit fraction. How many parts are there total? That goes on the bottom, and how many parts are there shaded in? That goes on top. So right away I can see there's one part shaded in. And now I need to figure out how many parts there are total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the unit fraction is 1/8. Think it, say it, 1/8. I want to now make 4 copies of 1/8. And all that means is I've got 1/8 here, and I'm gonna do that 4 more times. So I'm gonna shade in 4 more parts of this fraction. 1, 2, 3, 4. I have now shaded in 4 copies of 1/8. What I would like for you to do on your whiteboard is to write that as a unit fraction here, and then write it in fraction form. When you have done that, go ahead and pause the video until you have done that. When it's all done, go ahead and unpause and come back to check your work. All right, third graders, I already know that this fraction has been partitioned up into eighths. And I have shaded in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. I write that in unit form as 5/8. I can also write that in fraction form by putting the number of shaded parts over the number of parts total. Okay, I'm gonna say it, then you say it. Ready, go. 5/8. 5/8. Very good. We have shaded in 5/8 of this fraction by making 4 copies of the original unit form 1/8. Once you have done that part of the activity, go ahead and erase your boards, or just turn to where you have more space in your journal if you're using your journal, and draw for me a rectangle. And I'm gonna make this one long and skinny to make it a little different than the ones I've been drawing. I wanna partition this rectangle in fourths. I know the easiest way for me to do that is to estimate a half, like that, and then to estimate both of my halves in half, like that. Once you have done that, go ahead and shade in any part that you want to make the unit fraction, and then write it as a unit fraction. And I'm going to write 1/4. I say it, you say it, 1/4. Write it as a fraction, 1 shaded part over 4 parts total. I say it, you say it, 1/4. Okay, third graders, we're now gonna make 2 copies of 1/4 by shading in 2 different parts. There's 1 copy of 1/4, and here's another copy of 1/4. Go ahead and write this new shaded portion of this fraction down in unit form. And once you have done that, please write it down in fraction form. Again, what you are doing is you've shaded in 1/4, and then you've made 2 copies of 1/4 by shading in that part 2 new different times. Then write it in unit form and fraction form. Okay, third graders, I can see that I have 3 parts shaded in. There are 4 parts total. I write that as 3/4. I say it, you say it, 3/4. Now write the fraction. Total number of shaded parts on top, total number of parts in all on the bottom. I say it, you say it, 3/4. Very nice, third graders. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about what your independent practice is for today. For independent practice, you're going to go ahead and get your journal out and write today's date, which is 5-11-20. Happy Monday. And then write lesson 6, part 1. Again, we will finish the problem set for today. Tomorrow, we're just going to work on the first page of the problem set together. Okay, if you take a look at the problem set, the first one seems to be done for you. Let's read it together. Complete the number sentence. Estimate to partition each strip equally. Write the unit fraction inside each unit and shade the answer. So for the first one, 1A, it says to shade in 2/3. So I'm going to go ahead and draw that in my journal just to give you an example of what my expectation is. And this isn't actually A, it says 1 sample. It would be really smart if you also wrote this in your journal so that as you move on doing A through D, you'll have an example already in your journal of what the expectation is. So sample says 2/3. I'm going to write 2/3. And then I'm going to put an equal sign, and it's going to equal the fraction. So I've got the unit form equaling the fraction form. Once you have done that, you are going to draw a rectangle and partition it appropriately. So I've drawn my rectangle, and I can see that a 3 is on the bottom of my fraction, so I know that I'm going to partition it into 3 parts or thirds. So I'm just going to estimate to do the best I can to partition it into 3 equal parts. Now, it says write the unit fraction, or write the fraction inside each unit. So this is 1/3, this is 1/3, and this is 1/3. In thirds, I will have 3 1/3. Now, the 2 is the number on the top, and the 2 represents the number of parts I want shaded. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in 2 shaded parts. Like I've said, as we've been meeting in small groups, it's not important to shade it perfectly. I'm just going to do a quick scribble like that. But I have shaded in 2 of the thirds. On your paper, I would like you to now draw write, excuse me, 1A and write down 3/4. You are going to write 3/4 and then write it in as a fraction. So just like we did here, 2/3 equals 2/3. Here you're gonna write 3/4 equals, fill out the fraction, draw your rectangle, partition it appropriately, label it, and shade it appropriately to match this. Now that you've done 1A, go ahead and label 1B. And for 1B, you're going to write 3/7 equals. Draw your rectangle, write your fraction, partition your rectangle, label your rectangle, shade your rectangle to match this 3/7. When you are done with that, you may go on to 1C. 1C says 4/5. You're going to write 4/5 equals, you're going to write it as a fraction. Then you're going to draw the rectangle, partition the rectangle into fifths, shade in 4/5, label, don't forget to label each unit as 1/5. When you are all done with 1 through C, you may go on to 1D. 1D is 2/6. Write 2/6 in unit form. Write it in fraction form. Draw your rectangle. Then independently, you're going to partition this rectangle into the right number of parts total. Label each of the units appropriately. Shade in the total number of units the problem is asking you for. When you're done with 1A through 1D, you may move on to number 2. Number 2 is a 2-part word problem. And it says, Mr. Stevens bought 8 liters of soda for a party. His guests drank 1 liter. So think about what you already know about the problem. Think about what you don't know, because that might be where your question is. 2A says, what fraction of the soda did his guests drink? So RDW. Read it, draw it, write it. So I'm not doing a really fancy soda bottle, I'm just doing a rectangle. That's perfectly fine. You're going to read it, draw it, then you're going to partition this. Don't forget to label. Always, always, always label your unit forms. And then tell me in a sentence, how much did his guests drink? And then you're going to tell me what fraction of the soda was left. So if he drank this amount, what part is left? Write it in unit form and fraction form. I would like to see you practicing both unit form and fraction form. If you have a problem writing that unit, remember, I think it was in Friday's video, we went ahead and made a chart to let us know what all the unit fractions were. Look up that chart. That is there to help you with this, okay? When you're all done with your work, take a picture of it. Hopefully it's as neat as mine to make it easier on your teacher. Snap a picture, send it to your teacher either via email, text, or uploading it right to Schoology so we can see your great mathematical thinking. When we come back together tomorrow, we are going to complete the problem set for lesson 6. All right, third graders, thanks so much for your hard work today. Go ahead and kiss your smart brains for me. We'll talk soon. Take care.